Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of Old Scribes, the podcast for the what we like to call the mature sports fan. Want to welcome in my Borderland partner Matthew Aguilar in Chicago these days, born and raised in El Paso, Texas, and want to welcome our very special guest today, Jordan Banegas, who's with the A Mountain Collectives, and he's here to talk about NMSU's NIL program. Very timely topic, especially this day and age in college athletics. So, we wanted to have him on. There's a lot going on at this particular time, especially at schools like New Mexico State and Texas El Paso that aren't necessarily a Power Four school that have all the money and things like that, but finding ways to stay relative and build good programs. And I think we have good programs at schools that are very capable of competing uh, at a very level. We've seen that, and we've all had a taste of that. So Jordan, welcome
Welcome.
to the program, and happy to have you.
Appreciate it, George. Yeah, glad to be here. I've followed you for a while, and it's truly an honor, man. I was honored to be invited.
That's all right. Happy to be. So, let's get this out of the way. How about them Aggies?
Yes,
How'd they put on a
sir.
show the other
I was
night?
gonna say this timing is perfect.
You notice how quiet I am. I was waiting for you guys to bring that up.
We got the numbers.
Just
today.
You got the numbers, man. Hey, that was impressive, though. I mean, they blew them out of their own gym.
All around impressive,
Yeah.
though. Like, how special is basketball in the borderland when
Yeah.
you get it in this day and age? You get 12,000 people in an arena to watch D1 basketball like that. That's super special.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, it was like UTEP's first sellout in several years, and the fear now is that it was such a blowout that they're scared that the crowd won't come back, because it took a lot of work to get them there, after years of struggling, and now that they did, it just wasn't a very good game. I mean, that's all credit to the Aggies. They played a heck of a game, and they really showed that, man, they're a formidable bunch.
It did seem like there was some soul snatching going on this weekend. Yeah, to fill the gym up like that, and then to have it go as it did. I mean, as an Aggie fan, that was just one of those games where the muse is on the player's shoulders, where it's like they can't miss. Like they. And the stats back that up too, right? It was the biggest point differential since 1937 or something like that. Like you play that game, you play that game 100 more times, and I'm not sure how many times that score is the final, but
it could have also been UTEP is a program too that hasn't had many big games like this over the last decade, maybe more. I mean, they haven't made the tournament since 2010, I think.
And you know what? I don't know if you guys could sense that, but for me watching it, you could see that in the UTEP players. It was like their crowd was too big for them,
Yeah.
And the Aggies, meanwhile, have played at Dayton this year, and then at the Pit, which I was at front row for that beauty of a game. And they did not seem rattled. Like, I thought it was interesting. The in-game reporter for the broadcast talked about how relaxed the Aggies were, laughing and just pretty chummy in pregame, and UTEP was a bit tight, which I don't blame them. Sell out the gym you want to show out, but wasn't their night.
But I've been around this rivalry for a long time. They could play tomorrow; it could be a totally different game. So
Totally,
we can that there's a games ahead that just as important for programs.
Just like we got the Lobos up in their gym, and I don't, same thing. What were we, 20+ point underdogs there? And
Wow.
Yeah, but snuck that one out.
But it is, on that note, it is an exciting time There in in West Texas and Southern New Mexico, and to have two basketball teams that that look pretty good right now, and that it's been a while since both programs were simultaneously decent.
Agreed. Something does feel right having both teams near the top of a conference. Well, and especially being in the same conference, which I wish that's another tangent we can go down. But, I agree. Something does feel right, from the Henson and Haskins days to when I was in school. It was like Steven Jackson and Randy Culpepper up against the Jonathan Gibsons and the Wendell McKinnis teams, and those were, both of those teams were competing for postseason berths, So I agree. There has been a bit of a valley since then, at least on the minor side. I don't know, George, our Aggies have been pretty darn good lately, but but it's good to see seeing some success.
It's been so bad that the last I bring this up almost every time we talk UTEP basketball, but the last time they won a tournament game was 1992.
That is hard to believe.
Yeah, that was actually the time New Mexico State and UTEP were both in the Sweet 16 that year.
That's right. We lost to UCLA. Who did you guys lose to in that?
We lost to Cincinnati.
Okay.
Yeah, by two. And then Cincinnati went to the Final Four because they beat Memphis.
Oh,
damn.
Yeah. And George, I think there's a bit of a delay on your. I don't want to cut you off, but it sounds like your audio breaks up a bit. Just FYI.
Okay. See if I can fix it a little bit. That regional game that they had down in Albuquerque was a memorable game because I just remember the cheer when the Aggies took the floor for that game. It was just incredibly loud, one of the loudest roars that I've ever heard in any stadium whatsoever. So
that's awesome that you were there.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that's the same day Leitner hit the shot for Duke, because I was actually driving around Albuquerque with a friend of mine, Steve Rivera, and we listened to that game on the radio. So that was a pretty memorable time. Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
I heard that the Lobo fans kind of adopted us that weekend and cheered for us.
Well, they had nothing else to do.
Yes, sir. They never been to a Sweet 16. They don't know what that's about.
You're right.
That's one thing that the Rio Grande rivalry teams in the southern part have over the Lobos. We both have at least Final Fours. Lobos haven't made it past the second round.
Right.
And I think there's only one that's won a national championship, right?
They will never.
I was a child then.
It only took 8 minutes for the UTEP fan to mention 1966.
It was a little historic.
No, I don't play. If we we bring up our Final Four all the time too. But what's cool is so I'm out here in DC and I come across people who that's how they know about New Mexico State and UTEP is, like my wife's boss, for example, the first time I met him was like, New Mexico State, Lou Henson coached y'all. And he, had really good teams, especially because he integrated teams before that was like really like popular and stuff. I think that's so cool that that's how this region got our edge on the basketball court, doing something courageous like that.
Yeah, and back in the day too, they were not only known for their history, but they were consistently good programs. And now New Mexico, like you said, New Mexico State has always, over the last 20, 30 years, they've been much, much more consistent than UTEP has, certainly. But yeah, it is a source of pride, I think, to have that kind of historic significance associated to our region. And we've had books written, movies made. It's a special place for sure. It's for college basketball.
It is, which you wouldn't really guess, right? Like predominantly Hispanic population. Like what we like I know growing up, it's like you play soccer or baseball,
Yeah.
but when it comes to college basketball, though, this region, and that's what I've thought a lot about that too, Matt and George. And that's why I do give the flowers to Don Haskins and Lou Henson, because I don't think that was the case before those two. Like, tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like those were the pioneers that made that happen culturally,
Yeah, there's no question. In Lou Henson's book, he writes about going to Mississippi and recruiting Sam Lacey. And you think back about those teams, even when I was young, a lot of them came from Connecticut and New York and places like that. Yeah. This was prior to the Big East, and they went and they recruited players from the Northeast, and they went to the South, and they got great basketball players. And when I was going to school, they played in the Missouri Valley Conference, and they played against some great players, including Larry Bird. I had a conversation, with Maurice Cheeks the other day. He's assistant coach for I think the Knicks now, and he's been around a long time, played on great teams, Philadelphia 76ers, and coached a lot of NBA basketball. And we were talking about basketball in the Missouri Valley Conference back in the day and how tough it was, and reminiscing about those games. So those players still remember those games and going to places like the Pan American Center to play some hard, tough basketball.
That's awesome that we have that legacy. Like we don't gotta start from scratch, that foundation's already built.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had the privilege of covering both Don Haskins and Lou Henson during my stint at the El Paso Times. George was long gone by then, on his way to the New York Times.
Yeah, bigger and brighter things.
That's right.
I was keeping an eye on things, though.
So that was for Henson 2.0 then, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Pretty
and
awesome.
The personalities were just so starkly different yet the same, one kind of gruff and I don't have time for you, but okay, I'll sit and talk to you for an hour, and Coach Henson's just gentlemanly and always has a good thing to say. I remember I saw him, I covered him during the 97 season.
Was his first
and not for that was that first season back, after McCarthy was fired. Right. And
$1 a month salary.
I saw and I saw Coach Henson years later. I mean, probably maybe 10 years later. I don't remember. It was at a New Mexico State game, a football game, and I was wearing a hat, and I was didn't look like I did when I was covering him, and hey, Matt, how are you? Like, he remembered everybody's name that he met decades before, and that's unbelievable. And I guess that's also what made him such a special person, is that he remembered everybody, and he just a special guy and a great coach.
That doesn't surprise me at all. I feel like if he wasn't a coach, he could have been a member of Congress or something. And that, it meant in high esteem, because I agree. That's the only experience I've had with him. I had with him too, Matt, is, kind of similar thing. I knew him when I was on the Board of Regents as a student at New Mexico State. Mm-hmm. And then I don't even know how much time passed, and I get a call from a Illinois number, just out of the blue, and the other end of the phone, he goes, "Jordan, this is Coach Henson, just calling to see how you were."
Yep.
Like, what?
Yep.
Like he didn't. I had nothing to offer him. That was so genuine. Like. Yeah, so I'm not surprised at all, and I've heard other stories like that too. Just an incredible dude.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't cover him, but for one season, and you just 10 years later, you just don't expect a coach of his stature to really remember, and he did right away. Like I saw him yesterday. It was amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, Jordan, tell us how you got involved in the NIL program at New Mexico State.
Yeah, it's this Aggie fandom that we're talking about. It's kind of a sickness, right? Like I couldn't stay away. No, but seriously, I am a diehard fan, just like you guys, of my school. And, that really started growing up in the 90s in Cruces. I was at McCarthy games as a super young kid, but mostly it was my dad telling stories of those Missouri Valley Conference days and stuff. I was a diehard fan, and so I've always been involved. And like I said, I was on the Board of Regents at New Mexico State as a student. And New Mexico, I'm sure you all know this, but even just for the viewers, New Mexico is a unique state in that the student regents actually are voting members. Most other states, it's like an ex officio position. You're on the board to sit there and listen. But at New Mexico State, it's a board of 5 people, and you got a 20% vote.
Wow.
So in that role, I got really involved, being a fan and seeing the value that athletics brings to an institution, and like being a community member to like be literally in the front, in the seat to see that unravel in front of you was really like important for me in being a regent. And so got really involved in athletics as my tenure on the regents, which was only a 2-year term, and been, stayed connected ever since. So I'm out here in DC. My wife and I work out here. I manage a nonprofit. My wife's an attorney, and I, like you guys, I follow every single game, don't miss a thing. And anyway, to land the plane, as soon as NIL became a thing, that ruling in 21, it was my friend and I, who now is my partner at NIL, Luke Smith. We started doing due diligence right away. Just being a stakeholder of New Mexico State, like wanted to make sure someone was doing something about this. Like this was clearly a seismic shift in the industry, in the game. And if there's anything I know about New Mexico culture, it's very deferential. Someone else is, someone's trusting someone else is doing that. So, so I'm, in my mind, I'm like, well, if no one is, why not us? So we started doing some due diligence, seeing it takes a lot of work to run it. I mean, the best practices for NIL, name, image, likeness collectives weren't even there at the time, but either way, I could tell it was going to be a lot of work. So then I asked at the athletic department, what was going on, if anyone had expressed interest in doing that. Mario Mocha at the time approached Paul Grindstaff to run that, and so glad he did. Paul really got us out of the gate super early, quicker than our peers in El Paso and Albuquerque. And so once I knew it was covered, Luke and I just sat back, and I told Paul, let me know what I could do to help. And that's how I started to get to know Paul a little bit, just texting him, just giving back to the collective a little bit. And then just like everyone else in Las Cruces who seemed to be moving to Nashville, Tennessee to work and play for Vanderbilt, the mass exodus that happened out of the desert. Paul, of course, took that great opportunity for himself. And so I think the day it was announced, I texted him, hey, because I had already done all the thinking. Might have you guys?
You're good.
Okay,
we can still see you.
You're there.
You're good. My screen just went black, and I'm not sure why. Hold on. So yeah, I texted Grindstaff right away and was like, hey, I'm interested in carrying the flag because I've already been thinking about this, and then I also mentioned Luke Smith my partner and Paul Smith, his brother, who we grew up together going to Aggie games. It's kind of a dream, you guys. Pretty awesome deal we have. So I mentioned Paul Smith and Luke were interested too. And then I think within minutes, Mario called Paul Smith and things were rolling, and it happened really quickly, and just made a lot of mutual interests. You know, we have a lot of bandwidth to help and a lot of passion to help, and New Mexico State had a need. And so we stepped in, and it's been a lot of work. Not gonna lie, even a little bit more than I was expecting, but but it's a selfish endeavor for us. You know, we want to see the Aggies win, and we see this is the best way for us to have an impact on helping the Aggies win. And so you know, there's a lot of work to do still, a lot of work, because a lot of people see that NIL as like bad news for G5 schools like MSU and UTEP. We see it differently. You know, we see it as before there was only one path up the mountain, and you were behind all the big guys, not only the big guys, but all the other G5s that are in front of you. Now it's a bit more, no doubt, chaotic because there's a lot more paths up the mountain. But if you're cunning enough to carve one of those paths out, you know, you're not just relying on that tradition and those deep pockets alone. Now there's an institutional kind of like tradition or even wealth. You know, you have
other avenues.
Other avenues, yeah, to keep mixing analogies. You have more tools in your toolbox, and so we're excited, and it's fun, you know, and things are changing quickly too. You know, who knows how long this NIL era will even last. I mean, in a way, it's coming to an end already with the profit sharing, but either way, however it evolves, now with players getting their share, you know, there will always be, it seems like there will be a need for something like that. So
Jordan, talk about what it is that you and your partner do exactly in terms of this A Mountain Collective. Like what is it? You said it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know, even more work than what you anticipated, but what does all that mean? What kind of work? What are you doing? Talk about that.
Yeah. So the key word there is collective. So we're essentially pooling funds and resources so that student athletes can take advantage of these name, image, likeness opportunities while dealing with just one entity. So a student athlete doesn't have to go to 12 different businesses to work out individual contracts with that business to then receive funds for their name, image, and likeness value. You know, now they just sign with us, with one entity, A Mountain, who has the official relationship with New Mexico State, and we kind of do that groundwork for the athlete in collecting the funds, the advertising opportunities, the any kind of other ways to leverage that athlete's name, image, and likeness. We do that all under one house, essentially. So to get more at your question, to answer more clearly, what we're doing is we're bringing more people to the table, bringing more people into the collective, more businesses, individuals who have a stake and an interest in supporting these athletes, and connecting them to the vision, and then supporting the athlete in carrying out that vision, essentially, if that makes sense.
What can individuals who aren't a corporation that are trying to utilize an athlete's name, image, and likeness for a promotional program or something, but you're just a fan of the team and you want to contribute $25 a month or whatever it is, what benefits do they get besides just sort of satisfying satisfaction?
For sure. access and intel, George. So, and those donations are actually a significant part of what keep our collective running right now. So just a shameless plug, we need all we can get from those kind of retail contributions. Those add up quickly. Aggie Nation is enormous, something like 250,000 alumni across the nation, and so if everyone just did their part, we can be in a different tier entirely. And who doesn't want to see that? Everyone brings out their Aggie stuff when we win. That can be a lot more frequent. But anyway, to get out that soapbox. So what that individual is getting, and based on the tier that you give, we have differentiating benefits. So one, you give us, you invest in the players at any level, you're going to get a newsletter from us. That will include like testimonials, recruiting updates, stuff like that. But then the more you give, the more kind of exclusive that intel will be on the newsletter, and then the more like exclusive events that you'll go to. You'll get access to like certain giveaways that we do and stuff. We just gave away like a locker room tour and a seat package at the La Tech home game. So stuff like that. And really it's the tip of the iceberg right now too. We have a vision, right now those benefits are for individuals that are giving, but we have a vision to really develop that. And basically we want to hear from the fans what the fans want, from their contribution, and we can make that happen essentially. But those individuals are a key part to the Aggie success right now.
I saw where you wrote a letter that basically outlined, your vision and your plans, and some of the comments were pretty strong. What are some of the misconceptions that you see that people have about in NIL?
Great question, George, and there are plenty. So if I could pick a couple. I mean, the one that kind of gets in my craw is the whole, they shouldn't just the baseline, they shouldn't be able to do that. Because I mean, maybe that's just my own personal philosophy, but I have a hard time, anyone telling anyone else they can't do something, but especially using some sort of governing agency to do that, to wield that, and so the way I look at it is, if two entities, one being the player and one being an individual or a business, want to enter into an agreement where one gives the other monetary contributions for value that's added to the other, who's to say that they can't do that, including the NCAA or other fans, like I get the emotional argument that it hasn't always been that way, and I even get the argument that it does change the dynamics of the college athletics, but neither one of those is a winning argument against that it shouldn't happen at all. I think that's the players' right entirely. So that's kind of one misconception that I don't. And then the other is one that I'm guilty of myself too. I was just recently talking to one of our team's coaches, and I said, after a number of players recently got paid, like after a payment was issued, and I said, did you notice a lot of new Jordans, new sneakers around the team and stuff? And looked me straight in my eye and said, no, they use that to get home for Christmas. And yeah, that really got me. That really, to be honest, George, motivated me. That I think that's the other misconception, is that these players, especially at a school like New Mexico State, are making buku bucks. Don't get me wrong, we're competitive, but at the same time, New Mexico State doesn't. This isn't widely known, but New Mexico State doesn't offer what's called cost of attendance stipends, that even like other schools like UTEP and UNM do, that kind of offset the cost of living on campus or off campus. So NMSU doesn't offer that. And so a lot of times we get an argument that these players shouldn't be professional. Well, even if that is your argument, our counter to that is at New Mexico State, there's a gap that needs to be closed that the state and the university aren't doing. So the fans might as well, So that's another misconception that there's just this money just flowing, Like I said, we're competitive, but a lot of this is making it more comfortable for the student athlete to be able to compete,
Yeah.
And correct me if so. Going back to the beginning when you kind of said, "Is anybody else doing this?"
Yeah.
Now, if I'm wrong here, forgive me. But is this a volunteer position? Is it strictly that?
Sorry, I think you froze, Matt. But
sorry.
Question, was it a volunteer position?
Is your position now as part of this collective? Is it? Are you getting anything back?
The short of it is yes, it's volunteer. We own the company that runs the collective, right? And we'll see. It's kind of up to us on how much work we put into it to see if there will be something to kind of compensate us for our time. But going in, I'm not expecting anything. I joke with my wife that I already obsess over this, and might as well contribute some value to this whole thing. So yeah, and that speaking of, that brings up another misconception that I was just talking to someone in athletic department who works in an athletic department who assumed that we were getting a stipend from New Mexico State, the NIL, and that I can clarify is not the case. No, so we are on our own island. We have a relationship with the athletic department, but we are an S corp that's its own individual entity, and we exist to support these student athletes and making them successful. But yeah, certainly no stipends from the university.
Could it be that maybe as you guys grow and as you show a value, that could change in the future?
No doubt. Yeah. I know, I'm not a fortune teller, but, I do think that there's, this is early in the game in terms of athletes getting this type of compensation, and so kind of like what I was getting at before, there's a lot out there, that a lot of value that was previously restricted by the NCAA from these arbitrary restrictions on student athletes, right? And so now there's just this market that's been created, and that's really what I see us doing, is connecting that supply to that demand,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I wouldn't put any limits on potential, earnings down the road because of those type of opportunities. I think it's really real, especially in the borderland. UTEP and Las Cruces and El Paso care about their Aggies and Miners, and you can't tell me that association of these athletes doesn't have an impact on purchasing, and branding. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Talk about the programs that you have available. I know there's different tiers and different levels that people can contribute.
For sure. Yeah, we have. We just started the 575 campaign this year. So our goal is to get 575 donors, of course, a play on the area code 575, at $5.75 a month. which is very accessible entry point, and that's kind of that entry level that I mentioned. You're going to get our newsletter, and you're going to get invited to some events, maybe not the most exclusive ones. And then there's that other tier, 1888, the year our great university, the Yale of the Yuccas, was founded. And that's a Gary Carruthers. I got to cite my source. 1888, that kind of next tier. And it goes up from there, George, but I'm actually not going to plug those yet because we're still, we've only been at this about a month and a half. And so we're still reinventing those tiers and what we want them to look at. We see those initial two as pretty solid staples that will always be there. But going up from there, we want to get more creative and we're just getting started, so we haven't developed those yet. But a lot of what that will look like is access, like I mentioned before, so meetings with coaches. We're actually going to do a monthly lunch at Picacho Hills called the 6-Shooter Club. And so that will be with a coach each month, and kind of access that you're not going to get anywhere else. Stuff like a locker room tour, stuff like getting courtside seats, stuff like spending time with a player or a coach, going on a road trip with the team, which I'm sure you guys as journalists have done that. And that is quite the experience, even at the D1 level, at the D1, especially the football FBS athletes, like that travel experience is big time. So things like that, that we can then offer to the contributors. But we're still figuring those out.
Yeah, that's outstanding. Have you had a conversation yet with the new president and the new athletic director? And have those conversations been fairly positive, or?
We actually, my partners, Paul and Luke Smith, so they're located in Las Cruces. They sat down with Dr. Burge just last week. They relayed to me the text message I got was went as good as it could have gone. And so, yeah, really good conversation there. Have not sat down with the president, but we are hoping to get his audience sometime within the next month. We are working on that to have that conversation. But yeah, we're excited about a new leader coming in.
Mm-hmm. Talk a minute about the Diego Pavia situation, and particularly, as a as a guy who was definitely not an NMSU fan, but after that season and he had at New Mexico State and then to have him and Coach Kill and a lot of other players go to Vandy. I remember at the outset feeling like, well, that kind of sucks, right? I mean, that kind of turned around last season when they ended up Vanderbilt did so well, but just, that's another symptom of the current state of college football is that, or college sports, period, is that here 1 minute, gone the next, literally. So, talk about that.
No doubt. Yeah, that has been entertaining, if nothing else, And what I find fascinating too is just spending time in Cruces and around Aggie Nation, how much Aggie Nation still follows Diego and Eli Stowers and Jamani Jones and Coach Kill, and I see that as just more evidence that these players have significantly strong brands that that can do a lot of good, so up for the transfer portal, like there's still interest in following Diego Pavia. I think that alone is just worth thinking about. But man, what a season. I don't know if I believed that kind of a season was possible until it happened. And I'm a homer, but 10 wins, and we had 10 wins because someone told me that, yeah, it took us 15 games to get there. That's not true, because we were 10-2 at one point. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, this arms race across the country, like that even holds a candle to the NFL, when it
Yeah.
And everyone, it's the biggest show in town, in terms of the United States of America. And everyone would give their right arm to win 10 games. And who did that? The New Mexico State Aggies, Right. So that on top of that, in the NIL era, I don't know exactly, but most of those starters were on NIL contracts for that 10-win team, So that's the biggest argument that we hear when we're talking to people about contributing is we can't compete and they're just going to leave. And I feel like I'm going a little bit crazy, because there's evidence. It was less than a calendar year, away that we won 10 games.
Yeah.
And played in our rival stadium in front of 25,000 on national TV. Like that's the pinnacle, that's up there at least, and then of course, as a fan, just put my fan hat on for a second, I can't help but think, had we been able to retain a bit more talent, then we're actually having conversations about the New Mexico State Aggies making the college football playoff, that G5 spot,
Right. You do have in your op-ed in the New Mexican, you have a line here. It says, critics may argue that schools like NMSU never will be Alabama or Michigan, but that negative outlook is too often a self-fulfilling prophecy. We don't have to be them. But it's interesting too that, Vanderbilt just beat Alabama with a New Mexico kid, right?
Yeah, he's our offense, basically. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
with the New Mexico State offense.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think the biggest thing with what Diego did was phenomenal. It was phenomenal for the university. This is the way of life, college football, from now until who knows when.
Right.
And for New Mexico State to, number one, get the kind of advertising it's gotten out of every time Vanderbilt was on national television, you heard the name New Mexico State about 4 or 5 times.
Someone should quantify that. Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, branding like that. Yeah. Number two, it was an example. Hey, if you think you can play in the SEC and you think you're that enough, come to Mexico State and prove yourself.
Yep.
Because we've proven that we can send players to the SEC and be successful. So, they may in Las Cruces for a year or maybe 2, but that's the way it's going to be. If you can position yourself as one of the schools that think, well, if I play for a year or 2, then I can get to the SEC. Well, that's a pretty good place for a G5 school to be.
Yeah.
Agreed,
in
George.
My opinion.
And you keep pulling on that thread, and a couple more things come to the surface too. And that, that is one, everyone is dealing with the transfer portal. Alabama and Ohio State are losing players to, this isn't, we're doing a bit of navel gazing in Las Cruces, thinking that this is only happening to us, and then 2,
right.
Even if this version of coaching is happening, but you're telling me that every couple of years we can have a 10-win team? Are we not going to do it like that? What's the alternative? Right. I would take that. I would take that 10-win team every time, even knowing that Diego was going to transfer the next year.
Yeah, sure.
Why
Sure.
not?
Look at what it's done for the program so far.
Plus, he got a degree from here. Like, what a like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think.
And then just think about it. Yeah, New Mexico State kid changed the landscape of college athletics even more by getting another year because he was junior college transfer. And they got all the junior college transfers going, what about me? What about me?
Yep.
And they had to change the rule again. So, hey.
George, that is huge. I mean, that's going to be in like law textbooks and stuff or forever. It's going to be known as the Pavia case, and like for history, but also that's going to benefit us even now with basketball and football, having some guys come back that, Fahina on our defensive line was a senior. Looks like he's coming back. Abraham Montano, our NFL caliber kicker, he's coming back. So yeah, Diego changed the game. Of course, leave it to the atomic state to drop a bomb on the industry like that.
Hey, don't forget when we're talking football. Hey, UTEP just got a 5-star recruit.
I saw that. Does it count if they were 5-star
in 2023? Yes, it counts.
I feel like I have to give you those jabs, even though, like I said, I cheer for UTEP when we're not playing them. But no, you guys have an incredible class. Number one in Conference USA, at least rated on Scout.
Yeah, I mean, when the new coach came in, Scotty Walden, I was, he very, very raw, right? Very, and I was, nothing gets me more skeptical than a raw coach. But
wise man,
and and certainly the season didn't do much to change my optimism too much. But this recruiting class is pretty solid, and this quarterback, anytime you get a kid that used to play at USC and Boise State, regardless of the circumstances, to get them to come to El Paso, that's a big thing.
No, it is. And like, what, I think you guys are over 23 stars right now signed on this class. Like, really impressive. Honestly, I'm a little like, what's going on there?
Yeah,
like it reminds me of, it reminds me of the Clay Helton USC days. I'm not saying this is happening at all, but when his staff would get sign a player and then tell 24/7, now rate him a 4-star, now rate him a 5-star. That's just what it makes me think of. But no, I sincerely hope that they that these players pan out for y'all, because a rising tide lifts all ships, especially in this region. Like I really hope that happens, and I hope that both programs end up in the same conference again too, sometime soon.
It should have happened years ago.
Yeah,
it should have happened years ago. I was covering the team back in 2004 when UTEP went from I guess the WAC to Conference USA, and it just seemed like at the time they were moving to Conference USA just to avoid being in the same conference as New Mexico State, which didn't make any sense, because now we're playing teams in Florida who the fans have no familiarity with, or teams on the East Coast, or teams from Memphis. There's nothing there that sticks, but a New Mexico State rivalry is something that sticks. So yeah, hopefully soon that'll happen. That's something that needs to be done to increase crowds everywhere.
Didn't this year just feel so right being in the same conference? I don't think y'all would have sold out the Haskins Center if it wasn't a conference game later in the year. It's just how it should be. And honestly, throw the Lobos in there too. If those three were in the same conference, I think that would do a lot of good for everyone involved, not just us. Like, I'm not even selfishly saying that. I think the Lobos would benefit from.
Well, geographically, it just makes sense.
No doubt.
It just makes sense. And just the people care more because they have family, they have alumni, they have this and that go all over the state and the area.
Well, and remember, was it Tim Floyd, who ended the home and home with UNM, because you guys used to do that every year, even out of conference, and then that stopped like in the 2010s.
I think so. I think maybe that was it. Yep.
Yeah, that's a shame. It really would be good for all of those to be in the same conference.
Mm-hmm.
But what I always say about UTEP football, as long as if they play New Mexico State, they as long as they beat them, like great way to end the season this year, right, guys?
I don't recall that. I don't recall.
Me neither. I didn't catch that game.
I was as surprised as anybody.
That was tough, because the difference between 4 wins and 3 wins is significant. It just looks that much prettier,
Yeah, it does.
I was already counting on it, and that's rivalry games, though, right? Like, you guys, of course, took that one from us. Like,
that's the important thing, is the rivalry. You got to have that.
Yeah. But as long as UTEP football has, you guys always have the Sun Bowl, that's always gonna, that's kind of a ground for you. I mean, to me, that's why y'all are in the Mountain West. Like, that's why you got the bid. Like, that, it's just an institution,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah. Second oldest bowl game in the nation.
Yeah. Yeah. I love. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was a little story, when I was in college, I guess, maybe. I don't know if I told this story before, but I used to keep stats at the Sun Bowl. I did that for about 4 years when Pat Summerall and Tom Brookshire would call the game, and they would always have a little bit of a, shot of whiskey just to, warm the bones a little bit. And
that's awesome.
It was always a little chilly. So I even have a program I remember autographed by them somewhere in my files. But that was always a great experience to keep stats at the Sun Bowl.
Yeah, it was. My when I was covering the game, Oregon had just beaten Minnesota. I think I can't remember what the matchup was, but I'm heading down to talk to the players, and I see this guy, glasses, sunglasses, beard. I'm like, is that who's the Nike president?
Oh,
Phil Knight.
Phil Knight.
Phil Knight.
I'm like, boy, that looks a lot like Phil Knight. So I just went to him. I'm like, are you Phil Knight? And he goes, yes, I am.
Oh, that's awesome.
I said, do you mind if I get a couple of comments about because he was thrilled because Oregon just won. So he was, he was, mind if I get a couple of comments? No, go ahead. And I got a nice little sidebar out of it, but there he was, just standing, no one around him, just standing there with a big smile on his face because the Ducks were victorious.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Phil Knight in El Paso, casually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No one even knew he was there. Knew who he was. No one,
Yeah,
guy's a billionaire.
That's what's awesome about having that bowl. It's such like I said, an institution. I always make sure I watch it every year if I can't attend in person. But it's just the 2.5 hour long commercial for the Borderland.
Yeah. Like it really is, and I mean, a shout out to the Sun Bowl president Bernie Olivas, who does a great job. And the game is always really, really good. This year's game is maybe the best one I've ever seen. So
I believe it. Yeah, the production, of course, CBS does it, so it's fantastic. But the production is incredible. Like it looks like, if you notice the bowl season commercial that aired during all the bowls this year, just advertising like not ESPN, but college football bowl season. It had multiple clips of the Sun Bowl because it is just such a beautiful probably gonna get dragged from. I better stop there. Aggie fans are gonna drag me for speaking so highly of the Sun Bowl. So
yeah, they will. They will.
It's a beautiful place, no doubt.
Yeah.
Beautiful place.
I remember after
Jordan,
this year's game, some people here in Chicago were saying, "Hey, I didn't know that El Paso had X amount of sunny days throughout the year." You know what I mean? It's like you said, it's 2.5 hour commercial.
Yeah, and what they're not bringing that up about, with all due respect to like research and stuff, but like, higher ed stuff like that isn't going to bring that up.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going New Mexico State versus UTEP in higher ed.
Oh
Okay.
no, that's not even worth it. Like that.
Yeah. So Jordan, I wanted you to just touch on profit sharing is basically the next sort of change that might happen. How will that impact schools like New Mexico State and UTEP?
Yeah, we'll have to see, George. I would have a lot better idea if I was an attorney, and I'm not. I happen to live with one, so I'll maybe pick her brain on it. But we'll see. I mean, just overall, personally, I'm excited. Like I kind of mentioned before, that players are getting their share. I'm not going to say fair because I don't know what that is. I don't know what fair is, but they're, it's long overdue for this. It is. It's about time the people that were putting their own blood, sweat, and tears into this massive money machine are getting part of that. And so just from the onset and from what little I've been looking into it, I'm not so sure it's going to affect New Mexico State so significantly, because it looks like what the latest profit sharing limit is $20.5 million that the NCAA is talking about. And it looks like they're going to have an interesting time just applying these rules, enforcing these rules anyway. But on top of that, like I just at this time don't see a school like New Mexico State or even a UTEP or UNM getting into that, having the resources to even reach that cap, that 20 million cap from the institution itself. So honestly, what that makes me think is that the NIL, the kind of outside funds, are even more important for a G5 like us, because until the state does something different with how we fund our athletics programs, it's kind of up to individuals and fans to again cover that gap if we want to, So we'll have to see. I think the big boys are already. Just read an article today about how Texas Tech released how they're dividing up the 20.5 million. Something like 13 is going to football and 4 going to basketball and that kind of a thing. Those don't seem to be, and I'm not going to speak for the athletic department either. I don't work for them, but those don't seem to be decisions that New Mexico State will need to be making, so we'll have to see. But again, opportunity is the word that comes to mind when I think about that. Opportunity is what I think a school like New Mexico State, like UTEP, need to seize right now, as these tectonic plates continue to settle, or who knows if they're settling. They may just be getting started. Yeah. So, yeah, hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Jordan, for being on with us. I mean, it's very enlightening. I'm sure we'll have you back on again as this college athletics landscapes keeps shifting.
Yes,
and,
sir.
NIL becomes a more important thing to everybody concerned with college athletics. Yeah. So we appreciate your time.
Anytime. I'd love to come back. Would love to just shoot the breeze with you gentlemen anyway.
Yeah,
this is a delight. Matt,
definitely.
Chicago's my favorite city, so let's do the next one on location, you know.
Anytime you're in Chicago, you give me a holler. I was just in DC in August too.
Right back at
yeah.
you. And how cool, real quick before I know we got to leave, but how cool that someone living in South Florida, DC, and Chicago, we're coming together to talk about that. I mean, that alone is a testament to how powerful borderland athletics is. You know,
a couple of years ago, UTEP played DePaul here, and it was kind of cool to be. I was driving to the arena, and there was, a bunch of people in like orange Texas Western jerseys, in downtown Chicago. It's, it was kind of cool, I mean, it's, you don't expect it, but I mean, I thought I was going to be the only UTEP fan there, but I was not. There was a lot.
And instant friends, huh? Yeah. Extended family that you didn't know you had.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, that's awesome.
Pleasure meeting you, Jordan. We'll have to do this again.
Likewise, Matt. Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate both of y'all.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, guys.